Weston Chase had led a dozen men to their death and never once looked back. But when the chains rattled and he saw his father's eyes under the brim of that prisoner's hat, he almost let go of the reins. Weston Chase stood on the edge of the barren desert, the hot sun beating down on him like an unyielding hammer. He had always been a survivor, honed by years of experience as a scout in the army, where he learned to read the land and anticipate danger. His tough exterior was a shield built from countless missions that tested his mettle. Years spent navigating treacherous terrains and scouting enemy positions had shaped him into a man who was both resilient and wary. Now, as a mercenary, Weston took on jobs that others wouldn't dare touch. The army had hired him for this latest assignment, to escort a prisoner across the unforgiving desert to stand trial. He expected to meet a cold-blooded killer, someone with blood on their hands and darkness in their heart, but nothing could have prepared him for what lay ahead. With each step he took toward the designated meeting point, his mind raced with thoughts of what kind of monster he would face. Would it be someone who reveled in violence? Would they try to escape? Weston tightened his grip on the rifle slung across his back, reminding himself that he was ready for whatever came next. He had faced death more times than he could count, but this time felt different, like shadows of his past were creeping in. When Weston finally laid eyes on the prisoner, shock rippled through him like a jolt of electricity. The figure before him was not just any criminal, it was his father, the man he believed had abandoned him long ago and was responsible for his mother's tragic death during a robbery that shattered their family. His father looked beaten and broken, eyes filled with desperation yet somehow pleading for understanding. "Weston," the man rasped, pain lacing his voice. "I didn't do it, I swear." Weston's heart raced. Conflicting emotions surged within him as memories flooded back, the laughter from better days twisted into nightmares of loss and betrayal. Now standing face to face with the very person who haunted his dreams, Weston faced an impossible choice: cling to the truth he thought he knew or open himself up to a possibility he never imagined could exist. As Weston Chase stood in the dusty office of the Army outpost, the weight of his new assignment settled heavily on his shoulders. The brass had summoned him for a task that carried more than just the usual risks. It was a mission shrouded in urgency and danger. He listened carefully as the commanding officer outlined the details, knowing this wouldn't be a simple escort of a prisoner. "Your job is to bring this man to trial," the officer said, glancing at the file before him. "He's dangerous, implicated in a violent robbery that left several dead. We can't afford any mistakes." With each word, Weston felt his pulse quicken. A killer on his hands meant every moment would be fraught with peril. The order was clear: make sure this dangerous convict reached the courthouse in one piece amidst the unforgiving stretches of desert between them and their destination. Weston envisioned the arid land ahead, vast and empty, where threats could come from any direction. The isolation was both daunting and familiar. He had navigated similar terrains before, but never under such high stakes. He gripped the file tighter, his heart racing with thoughts of the kind of creature he might face. Would he encounter someone who reveled in violence, a remorseless killer who laughed in the face of danger? Weston had faced worse enemies in his time, yet this seemed different. Something gnawed at him, a feeling that these days good men could be found wearing bad reputations like shadows on their backs. Transitions came quickly now. He could no longer ignore how personal this mission would soon become. Preparing himself mentally, Weston felt a conflict brewing inside him. He was ready to fight back against any potential threat that lurked ahead, but there was an unsettling thought echoing in his mind. What if this prisoner wasn't what he expected? Despite knowing he had no place for compassion during an assignment like this, he couldn't shake off a sliver of doubt. As the sun beat down outside, he heard whispers of a past long buried, a painful truth he had chosen to ignore. Things weren't always black and white. As Weston stepped into the holding area, the air felt heavy and tense, like the calm before a storm. He steeled himself, preparing to face the dangerous criminal he had been briefed about. The dim light flickered overhead, casting eerie shadows on the walls, but nothing could have prepared him for what he was about to see. When the door creaked open, revealing the prisoner shackled to a bench, Weston's heart sank. There sat a man who looked beaten and broken, his once strong frame now frail and weary. But it wasn't just any prisoner, it was his father, the very man Weston had believed to be dead for years. Shock coursed through him like ice water, leaving him momentarily speechless. "Dad," he whispered, disbelief etched across his face. Memories flooded in happier times when laughter echoed through their home and a warmth filled the air. But those days were overshadowed by pain and betrayal. How could this man be alive? How could he come back into Weston's life like this? His father looked up, eyes filled with desperation and guilt. "Weston, I didn't do it," he rasped, voice trembling with emotion. "I'm innocent." Anger flared within Weston as he remembered how his mother had died during that terrible robbery all those years ago, an event that shattered their family and left him with scars that never fully healed. "You killed her," Weston shouted, fighting back tears as rage intertwined with confusion in his chest. "No," his father exclaimed, struggling against the chains that bound him. "It wasn't me, I was set up." Weston's heart raced as conflicting emotions swirled inside him. Betrayal battled with a yearning for understanding. A lifetime of resentment faced off against the flickering hope that maybe there was more to this story than he knew. Standing on opposite sides of a chasm created by time and hardship, they were both prisoners in their own ways, one physically bound by metal cuffs and the other shackled by memories of loss and anger. As Weston met his father's gaze, he realized this journey would not only involve escorting a criminal, but also confronting ghosts from the past that had haunted him for far too long. As Weston stared into his father's eyes, memories from his childhood surged forth like a rushing river, carrying him back to a time before tragedy had reshaped his world. He was just a young boy then, filled with innocence and laughter, unaware of the darkness that lurked just beyond the edges of his home. It was a rainy evening when everything changed. Weston could remember the pitter-patter of raindrops against the window, the comforting smell of dinner wafting through their small house. His mother was in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared their favorite meal. Weston sat at the table, eagerly awaiting her famous chicken stew while his father was supposed to be home from work any moment. But then came the loud crash, a sound so jarring it echoed through the walls. Weston's heart dropped as he exchanged fearful glances with his mother. She quickly rushed to him, her face pale, her eyes wide with fear. "Stay here, Weston," she ordered, her voice trembling but firm. He watched helplessly as she moved toward the door. That was the last time he saw her alive. The chaos that followed was a blur of sirens and shouting. Weston remembered being pulled away by neighbors while officers swarmed around their home. He could barely grasp what was happening. All he knew was that something terrifying had invaded their peaceful life. Later, he would learn that masked robbers had entered their home, demanding money and valuables. In the chaos, his mother had been shot, an innocent caught in a violent storm. Days turned into weeks, but the pain never faded. With every whispered conversation he overheard, Weston pieced together fragments of information that pointed to his father's involvement in some shady dealings that ultimately led to that fateful night. He felt a deep-seated betrayal. How could his father have put them in such danger? As he grew older, anger took root, entwining itself with grief. He convinced himself that if his father had been around, if he hadn't abandoned them, that night might have ended differently. Now, confronting his father for the first time in years made those buried feelings rise to the surface like a tide pulling him under. The boy who once looked for comfort in his father now stood ready to confront him, but this time it was not just anger he faced. It was a decision about how to reconcile love and loss in a world filled with shades of gray. Weston stood in the dim light of the holding area, grappling with a storm of emotions as he looked at his father, who appeared beaten and broken. His once strong demeanor was reduced to frailty, and each bruise on his face seemed to echo the pain Weston had felt since that fateful night. The man he had long believed to be a monster now looked more like a victim, and it left Weston conflicted. "Weston," his father pleaded, desperation etched in every word. "I didn't do it, I'm innocent." The tremor in his voice tugged at Weston's heartstrings, but anger quickly rose to the surface. How could he believe anything this man said after all these years? Memories of his mother's laughter, now lost forever, haunted him as he battled between love for the family bond and the weight of betrayal. "Why should I trust you?" Weston shot back, his voice filled with fury. "You were never there when we needed you. You let it all happen." Each accusation cut deeper than he intended, but he couldn't help himself. Years of resentment spilled over like a boiling pot desperately needing to release its steam. His father's eyes glistened with tears, and for a moment, Weston saw the man he used to admire, the loving father who taught him how to fish and ride a bike. But those memories clashed violently with the reality of their broken past. Could he really reconcile the man before him with the father who had abandoned him in his darkest hour? "I know you think I'm guilty," his father continued, voice trembling. "But I was set up, you have to believe me." Weston's heart wavered as doubt crept in. What if there was truth in his father's words? What if he had been wrong all along? This internal struggle left him restless, the foundation of everything he believed shattered before him. Weston took a deep breath, trying to steady himself amid the chaos inside. He needed answers, not just for his father's sake, but for his own peace of mind. As they prepared for their journey into the desert, Weston realized that uncovering the truth would not only determine his father's fate, but also redefine who Weston was meant to be. A son torn between loyalty and justice, forced to confront the shadows of their shared past. The sun rose high in the sky as Weston and his father began their journey through the unforgiving desert, the heat radiating off the sand like a living thing. The landscape was harsh and desolate, with endless stretches of parched earth that seemed to blur into the horizon. Each step felt heavy, not just from the weight of their physical burdens, but also from the emotional strain that lay between them. Weston led the way, glancing back occasionally at his father, who shuffled along in chains. The shackles clanked against one another, a constant reminder of both his father's status as a prisoner and the gulf that now separated them. Weston couldn't shake off the conflicting emotions swirling inside him. Anger fought with a flicker of compassion as he recalled the boyhood memories of adventure and laughter they once shared. "Just keep moving," Weston said tersely, trying to mask his turmoil with a hardened demeanor. He focused on the path ahead, conscious of how each grain of sand seemed to echo their troubled past. The silence between them was palpable, filled with unspoken words that neither dared to utter. It was as if the desert itself held its breath, waiting for the inevitable confrontation that loomed on the horizon. His father stumbled slightly, skin glistening with sweat under the relentless sun. "Weston," he started, but Weston quickly cut him off. "Save your breath. You're not going to charm me into believing you," he snapped, anger rising again like a tempest. Each word felt like a dagger thrown at the man who had caused so much pain in his life. "I'm not trying to charm you," his father replied softly, voice strained and weary. "I just want you to understand." Understand, the word echoed in Weston's mind like a mocking laugh. How could he ever understand why his father had chosen to abandon him when they needed him most? Every memory of laughter turned sour as he recalled nights spent waiting for his father's return, nights that never came. As they trudged across the hot sands, tension crackled in the air, making it harder for Weston to breathe. The vast desert mirrored their complex relationship, expansive yet filled with hidden dangers. With every step deeper into this unforgiving landscape, Weston sensed that this journey was not only about delivering his father to trial, but also about exploring the truths buried beneath layers of hurt and betrayal, truths he might not be ready to face. As Weston and his father trudged through the relentless desert heat, a sense of unease began to creep in, amplified by the vast emptiness surrounding them. It was early afternoon when they first heard the distant rumble of hooves echoing across the sand, a sound that sent shivers down Weston's spine. He quickly stopped and raised a hand to signal his father to halt. "We need to find cover," Weston urged, scanning the horizon for any sign of danger. The landscape offered little refuge. Jagged rocks jutted out sporadically, barely enough to conceal them. Fear clawed at his gut as he recalled the army's warnings about potential threats in the area. Criminals who would do anything to prevent their prisoner from reaching trial. Just as they ducked behind a large boulder, a group of horsemen appeared in the distance, their figures silhouetted against the blinding sun. They rode with purpose and speed, and as they drew closer, Weston's heart raced. These weren't just random bandits, they were specifically targeting him and his father. Whoever was behind this wanted to stop them at all costs. "Stay quiet," Weston whispered urgently, lowering his voice as adrenaline surged through him. He felt an overwhelming surge of protectiveness for his father, despite their complicated relationship. They needed to make it to the courthouse alive. The horsemen approached, swiftly, armed and menacing. Weston could see their determination etched on their faces. "We have to move," he said quietly, gesturing for his father to follow closely behind him. The two made their way along a narrow path that wound between the rocks, hearts pounding in unison. Without warning, one of the riders spotted them, yelling out a warning to his comrades. Panic flooded through Weston's veins as he urged his father to run. They darted down an incline just as arrows whizzed past them, thudding into the rocky walls above. "We can't let them catch us," Weston shouted over his shoulder, fear escalating as they barely escaped the initial attack. With every step in this treacherous terrain, Weston felt the weight of urgency pressing down on him. He couldn't allow anything to stand in their way, not now when both his father's life and their chance at finding truth hung in the balance. As they ran deeper into the desert, Weston realized this journey was not only about survival, but also about uncovering secrets that lay hidden beneath layers of betrayal and pain. As they continued to flee through the desert, the sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows that danced across the sand. Weston felt his heart racing, not solely from the adrenaline of their escape, but from a rising tide of memories that began to overwhelm him. With each step, he was pulled deeper into thoughts of his mother, her laughter, her comforting embrace, and the horrifying night when she was taken from him. "Weston, over here," his father called out, snapping him back to reality. They ducked behind a rock formation to catch their breath and regroup. But even in the quiet moment, Weston could feel the weight of his unresolved feelings pressing down on him like the oppressive heat of the desert. "Do you remember anything about that night?" Weston asked, his voice barely above a whisper as he sauntered further away from danger yet closer to his emotions. His father's face twisted with pain at the mention of their shared past. "I wish I could take it all back," he murmured, guilt flooding his words. "I wanted to protect you both." The anguish in his father's voice stirred a mixture of fear and doubt within Weston. How could he reconcile this broken man with the one he blamed for so long? Memories crashed over him, a young boy waiting in vain for a father who never returned home, convinced that if only his father had been there, things would have turned out differently. "Did you know about what was happening?" Weston pressed, struggling to keep his anger at bay. "Did you put us at risk?" "No," his father's response was immediate and desperate. "I didn't know. I was trying to keep my head above water." A flicker of uncertainty glimmered within Weston. Doubts began to seep into his mind as he questioned everything he thought he understood about that night. Could it be possible that there was more truth buried within guilt than he had given credit for? He had built a fortress around himself for so long, only to find it rattled by the very man he had turned against. "I just want to understand," Weston admitted finally, feeling the burden of years spent holding onto tight knots of anger begin to loosen slightly. In this vast desert, with danger looming around every corner, he began to realize that navigating their tumultuous relationship might be as perilous as their physical journey ahead. As they prepared to step back into the chaos beyond their hiding place, Weston recognized that confronting both external threats and internal battles would be essential for discovering both survival and redemption. As the sun began to set, casting a fiery glow over the desert, Weston and his father found temporary shelter in a narrow canyon. The rocky walls loomed over them like ancient guardians, but instead of offering comfort, they served as a backdrop for the turmoil brewing inside Weston's heart. With the sounds of distant hoofbeats still haunting them, he knew they couldn't linger for long. "Weston," his father said quietly, breaking the heavy silence that hung between them, "you need to decide what you believe." The weight of those words hit Weston like a physical blow. He had been wrestling with his emotions, caught in a storm of anger and confusion. Could he truly trust his father, the man he had blamed for his mother's death for so many years? Those memories of that fateful night, the screaming, the chaos, and his mother's lifeless form flashed vividly in his mind. "You want me to forgive you?" Weston asked bitterly, fighting back tears that threatened to spill over. "You want me to forget how your actions changed everything?" "I don't expect forgiveness," his father answered, voice trembling with sincerity. "I just want you to see the truth. I never meant for any of this to happen. I loved your mother." Weston felt a flicker of something deep within him, a longing for reconciliation mixed with an overwhelming wave of doubt. "But how can I believe you?" he replied, shaking his head in frustration. "How do I know you're not lying to save yourself?" "Look at me," his father pleaded, gesturing to his battered body. Do you think I chose this? Do you think I would come back here if I had a choice? I swear I was set up. I need you to trust me. I need to know you see me as more than just a monster." Caught in an emotional crossfire, Weston closed his eyes and inhaled sharply. This was a pivotal moment, a chance to let go of the hatred that had consumed him or cling to the truth he had held for so long. Suddenly, the sound of approaching hoofbeats returned, louder and more threatening this time. "I can't keep doing this," Weston shouted as panic surged within him again. He had to make a choice before it was too late. With danger closing in, he realized that his decision would shape not only their fate, but also how he viewed love, loyalty, and the possibility of forgiveness in a world filled with betrayal and pain. The tense silence shattered as Weston and his father emerged from the canyon, their hearts still racing from the emotional turmoil. Suddenly, a group of horsemen appeared on the horizon, silhouetted against the setting sun like dark shadows come to life. The menacing figures rode with a sense of purpose, and Weston's instincts kicked in. They were here for his father. "Get behind me," Weston shouted, adrenaline surging through him as he quickly assessed their options. His father hesitated, eyes wide with fear and desperation. "We can't let them take you. We have to keep moving." But before they could retreat, the leader of the horsemen raised his hand, signaling for them to stop. "You can't protect him forever, Weston," he called out tauntingly. The man's voice was cold and authoritative, sending shivers down Weston's spine as he recognized him from his past, a figure connected to the robbery that had shattered their lives. "We're not going anywhere," Weston replied defiantly, trying to mask his fear under a facade of bravery. With his heart pounding in his chest, he felt torn between two worlds, his loyalty to a father who had been absent for so long and his desire for justice for his mother's death. "Your father is a criminal," the leader sneered, glaring back at them. "Let us take him, you know what he did." With each word directed at him, Weston felt the weight of all those years of pain and anger piling up inside. He thought of his mother, not just her tragic end, but also her laughter and love that had been snatched away from him. The truth hung in the air between them like an unspoken challenge. Would he protect the man who might have caused all this suffering? "Tell me you're innocent," Weston shouted at his father over the rising tension, desperation spilling into his voice. "I am, I swear," his father pleaded again, desperate eyes pleading for belief. The horsemen advanced closer now, weapons drawn and ready for conflict. In that instant, time slowed as Weston faced an impossible decision: protect his father at all costs or unleash justice for the mother he lost so many years ago. With fate hanging in the balance, Weston took a deep breath and locked eyes with his father, an unbreakable bond forged by blood yet strained by betrayal, and made a choice that would define not only their destinies, but also what love truly meant in a world marred by darkness. The confrontation with the horsemen had been intense, but as the dust settled and the danger passed, Weston found himself standing in a moment of silence. His heart still raced, but clarity began to wash over him like a cool breeze through the oppressive heat of the desert. He had made a choice, one that would redefine his relationship with his father and reshape his understanding of family. "Let's keep moving," Weston finally said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. They resumed their journey, but this time something significant had shifted between them. The air was still thick with tension, yet an unspoken understanding lingered. They were both just trying to survive, grappling with their pasts and searching for a path forward. As they walked, Weston felt the weight of his mother's absence more keenly than ever. Memories flooded his mind, her laughter echoing in their home, the warmth of her embrace, and the way she made every day feel full of promise. He had spent so long holding onto anger and resentment toward his father, convinced that he was to blame for the tragedy that had shattered their family. But as he walked alongside the man who had once been his hero, Weston started to see the complexities of their situation. "Dad," he began hesitantly, glancing sideways at his father's weary face. "I've spent so many years believing you were guilty, but I realize now that things aren't that simple." His father turned to him, eyes glistening with a mixture of hope and pain. "I never wanted to hurt you, Weston. I loved your mother. I'd do anything to take back that night." In that moment, Weston understood that blood sometimes held more weight than perceived truths. The path to forgiveness would not be easy, but he felt a flicker of compassion igniting within him, a desire to reconcile the past with the future. Perhaps justice could coexist with understanding. As they continued across the vast expanse of sand, Weston resolved to face whatever challenges lay ahead not only as a mercenary tasked with delivering a prisoner, but as a son willing to explore the tangled web of loyalty and love. He would protect his father while seeking the truth about their shared history, forging a new bond that acknowledged both their flaws and their humanity. With renewed determination, Weston took a deep breath, feeling a sense of relief wash over him. This journey was not just about reaching the courthouse. It was about healing and accepting the complexities of family that shaped who they were meant to be. As Weston and his father finally approached the courthouse, the weight of their journey settled upon them like a heavy cloak. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting an orange hue over the dusty road, symbolizing not just the end of their perilous trek, but also a significant transformation in Weston's heart. He had faced danger, unearthed painful memories, and navigated a complex relationship with the man he once reviled. Now he stood on the precipice of a new beginning. Weston took a moment to reflect on how far they had come together. Each step through the desert had been a battle, not only against external threats, but also against the internal demons he had carried for so long. He remembered how he used to think of his father as nothing more than a monster responsible for his mother's death. But throughout their harrowing experience, Weston had discovered layers of complexity that challenged that perception. His father was flawed and broken, but also desperate and loving. "Whatever happens in there," Weston said quietly, glancing at his father, "I want you to know that I see you differently now." The sincerity in his voice surprised even him. It was as if a dam had broken within him, releasing years of pent-up grief and anger. "I never wanted this for us," his father replied, his own voice filled with emotion. "I loved your mother more than anything." Weston nodded slowly, feeling compassion replace some of his lingering resentment. He now understood that justice could take many forms, that sometimes it meant protecting family even when the truth remained murky. As they stepped toward the courthouse doors, Weston felt an unusual sense of peace wash over him. This journey had taught him invaluable lessons about forgiveness and loyalty. It had forced him to confront difficult truths about love and loss. Perhaps moving forward didn't mean ignoring the past, but rather accepting it as part of who they were. With renewed determination, Weston grasped the door handle, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The path to healing would be fraught with challenges, but he now knew that blood held weight, a bond that could surpass misunderstandings and pain. As they entered together, Weston felt hope flicker within him like a flame igniting in darkness. It was a promise that despite tragedy and betrayal, family could still bind them in unexpected ways. And with that understanding came the possibility of moving forward into a brighter future, one defined not by their struggles, but by their resilience as they faced whatever came next together.